I never believed in monsters until I spent the winter of 1921 beneath the floorboards of the Rockefeller estate. My name is Arthur Penhaligon, and for 40 years I kept my mouth shut while the dirt of that foundation slowly claimed my sanity. They struck a bargain in the dark, and I was the man they hired to feed the silence. They handed me a heavy leather-bound journal and a set of iron keys that felt unnaturally cold against my palm. The work began in a damp, limestone-walled chamber built directly into the guts of the hillside. The air down there didn't smell like earth or pine. It smelled like copper and rot. My first entry noted only that the walls were weeping a thick, viscous sap that defied chemical analysis. I was instructed to collect samples and pour them into a lead-lined furnace located in the center of the chamber. By mid-December, I realized that vibration wasn't geological. It was the slow, ponderous expansion of a massive chest cavity pressing against the limestone ceiling of my workspace. The Rockefeller representatives would come twice a week, men in tailored wool coats who never looked at me, only at the logs. They were terrified of the thing in the hole, yet they were committed to its survival. I started hearing voices, not in my head, but through the iron ventilation pipes that ran deep into the earth. It wasn't human speech, but it was an imitation of it. I found a cufflink in the drainage grate, bearing the Rockefeller crest, slick with that same black, weeping sap. One of them had been down here, and they hadn't left the way they came in.
I saw a crack in the foundation that hadn't been there the day before.
It was wide enough for a man to slip through, and from it, a thick, sweet-smelling fog poured into my workspace. I looked through the fissure, and for a split second, I saw it. It had a face, or at least a suggestion of one, a pale, flattened surface that mirrored my own features back at me with horrific, fluid accuracy. I couldn't look away from that thing. It was like staring into a mirror that had gone horribly wrong. I finally understood that I wasn't just a worker. I was a sacrifice. Those logs weren't for research. They were a leash, keeping that thing tethered to the estate. The men in the coats weren't masters. They were just janitors. I had to end it. I grabbed my lamp and smashed it against the iron beams. Fire erupted, flooding the chamber with light. The thing roared, a sound like the earth itself breaking. It wasn't a scream. It was a groan of stone and sorrow.
I ran, the heat of the fire right on my heels.
I finally reached the tree line. The forest was already swallowing the path behind me. I didn't look back, not even once. I've spent the rest of my days moving from town to town. People call me a madman, a drifter who talks to the wind. But they don't understand the geography of this country. We live on a crust of vanity, ignoring what's beneath us. The Rockefeller estate is still there, and the woods are quiet. But the rhythm is coming back, stronger than before. If you feel the ground shiver, do not look for the source. If the birds stop singing and the air turns to copper, run. Pray that whatever is breathing beneath isn't hungry enough to reach for you. I never believed in monsters until that winter. I've seen the truth, and now I'm passing it on. I'm tired, but I'm finally at peace. The woods are still quiet, but the rhythm is always there, waiting. The earth is just a cage. I walk these streets and see people rushing by.
They have no idea what's really beneath their feet.
It's like I'm a ghost, carrying a secret that nobody wants to hear.
I still keep this journal close.
Every page is a reminder of what I saw down there.
My hands shake just thinking about it.
The woods were never quiet because of peace.
They were quiet because they were holding their breath,
waiting for something to happen in the dark. Those men in the wool coats, they never looked at me. They were just janitors cleaning up a mess they couldn't control. They kept the world blind so the money would keep flowing.
I can still hear them sometimes.
The voices coming through the pipes, sounding just like my family. It was learning me, piece by piece. My skin started to peel away. Everything I ate tasted like sulfur. I was becoming part of that place, a tether to the abyss. I look in the mirror, and I don't recognize the man staring back. I wonder if it's still waiting down there.
The rhythm is coming back, and it's stronger than ever.
There it is again. The ground is shivering beneath my feet. The trees are silent, just like they were back then. I won't look for it this time. I'm walking away, and I'm not looking back.
I just pray that it's not hungry enough to reach for the surface.
We live on a crust of vanity, ignoring the things that pulse beneath our feet.
waiting for the day when the foundation finally gives way.
I still feel the weight of those keys in my palm.
The night the rhythm stopped, the silence was deafening.
It was heavier than any sound I'd ever heard. I shouldn't have moved, but I had to see.
The wall was pulsing with a strange, eerie light.
It was like the earth itself was breathing.
A crack had opened in the bedrock overnight. A sweet, thick fog poured out into the room. I stood there, completely frozen in place.
It wasn't a monster of scales or fur.
It was a shifting mass of translucent tissue.
A network of nerves and muscle woven into the earth. It had a face, a pale, flattened surface.
It mirrored my own features back at me.
It was a hungry, ancient intelligence. I realized then that I was never meant to leave.
My logs were just a tether to keep it focused.
I was just a janitor for an ancient, dark deal.
I smashed my lantern against the iron beams.
Fire flooded the chamber, licking at the walls.
The thing roared, a sound like stone and sorrow.
I ran through the tunnel as the foundation collapsed. The heat was right behind me, pushing me forward.
I didn't look back. I just kept running.
I reached the tree line, gasping for air. The forest was already reclaiming the path behind me. I was out, but I left my life in that hole. I'm an old man now, and my time is short. But I leave this truth for those who listen. If you feel the ground shiver, run. I drift from town to town, always listening. People think I'm just a crazy old man, but they don't know what's beneath their feet. The memory of that place still clings to me like a bad dream. I can still smell the copper and the rot, even after all these years. They think they own the land, but they're just walking on the roof of a cage. I've mapped the tremors, and I know where the foundation is weakest.
When the birds stop singing, you know it's close.
The silence is the loudest thing I've ever heard.
I listen to the earth every chance I get.
It's always there, waiting for someone to notice.
These logs are the only proof I have.
I wrote it all down, hoping someone would eventually understand. They build their towers high, but they don't see what's underneath.
It's only a matter of time before the foundation gives way.
I don't belong in their world anymore. I'm just a ghost, waiting for the end. The river flows, and the earth breathes. Everything is connected, whether we want it to be or not. My time is almost up, but the truth remains. I hope someone hears me before the ground finally gives way. I still remember the day I arrived at the estate. The weight of that journal feels heavier every single year.
November 4th, 1921.
I can still smell the copper and the rot in my dreams. They told me to feed the furnace with that black sap. I didn't ask why, because I needed the money for my sister. The woods above the estate went completely silent. It was like the whole forest was holding its breath, waiting for something. By December, the vibration turned into a rhythm. It was like a massive chest cavity pressing against the ceiling. The men in wool coats came twice a week. They never looked at me. They only cared about the furnace. I started hearing voices through the pipes. It was mimicking my sister's laugh and my father's chair. I found a cufflink in the grate with the Rockefeller crest. It was covered in that same black sap. The heat in the chamber became unbearable. My skin started to peel, and everything tasted like sulfur. Then, on January 12th, the rhythm just stopped. The silence was heavier than the noise had ever been. I grabbed my lamp, ignoring the rules. I walked toward the far wall, where the bedrock pulsed with a strange, bioluminescent glow. The silence was heavy, like a physical weight pressing against my eardrums. I saw a crack in the foundation that hadn't been there the day before. It was wide enough for a man to slip through. A thick, sweet-smelling fog poured into my workspace. I looked through the fissure, and for a split second, I saw it. It wasn't a monster of scales or fur. It was a mass of shifting, translucent tissue, a sprawling network of nerves and muscle. It had a face, or at least a suggestion of one. It was a pale, flattened surface that mirrored my own features back at me. It was a hungry, ancient intelligence, trapped by the people who rule the world. The confrontation wasn't a battle of weapons. It was a realization of my own expendability. I understood then that I was never meant to leave. I realized the men in the wool coats were not the masters, but the janitors. They were cleaning up the mess of an ancient deal. They required a constant supply of human consciousness to keep the thing dormant. I took my lantern and smashed it against the iron support beams. The kerosene ignited, flooding the chamber with fire. The thing roared, a sound that wasn't a scream, but a tectonic shift. I ran through the service tunnel, the heat licking at my heels. The foundation began to buckle and collapse. I didn't look back until I reached the tree line. I reached the tree line, where the forest was already reclaiming the path. I left my life in that hole. I never saw my sister again, though I hear she recovered. I spent the rest of my days moving from town to town. I was always looking for the sound of a steady, rhythmic thrumming in the earth. People call me a madman, a drifter who talks to the wind. We live on a crust of vanity. ignoring the things that pulse beneath our feet.
I watch the ground, waiting for the day when the foundation finally gives way.
It is a heavy burden to carry, knowing the world is just a thin shell.
You think the woods are yours because you walked a trail and saw the sun.
But you are just walking on the roof of a cage. I kept those logs for a reason, to warn those who listen to the silence. The Rockefeller estate is still there, and the woods are still quiet.
But the rhythm is coming back, stronger than before.
I can feel it in my bones, a low, subsonic thrumming. I am an old man now, and my time is short. But I leave this truth for those who venture too far into the unseen wilderness.
My hands shake as I write this, but the warning must be preserved.
If you feel the ground shiver beneath you, if the birds stop singing and the air turns to copper, do not look for the source.
It is a trap, a siren song of the earth itself. You must turn away before it catches your scent. Run and pray that whatever is breathing beneath you isn't hungry enough to reach for the surface.
The silence is not empty. It is waiting.
It has been waiting for a very long time. I never believed in monsters until I spent the winter of 1921 beneath the floorboards of the Rockefeller estate. That winter changed everything I thought I knew about the world. It was the end of my innocence and the beginning of my nightmare. The memory of that cold, damp air still clings to me. I can still smell the copper in the rot even after all these years. It is a scent that never leaves you, a reminder of what lies beneath. I am just a man who saw too much. A man who was never meant to know the truth. But now that I have seen it, I cannot unsee it, and I cannot keep it to myself. The story ends here, but the warning remains. Listen to the silence, and if you hear the rhythm, run. The earth is not as solid as you think, and some things are better left in the dark. I look back at the journal, the ink fading like my own memories. It's a heavy weight, this record of things that shouldn't exist. I wonder if anyone will ever truly understand the cost of the silence I kept. The Rockefeller name is etched into the history books, but they left out the parts that happened in the dark. They built their empire on foundations that were never meant to hold the weight of men. I was just the one they paid to watch it all crumble. Sometimes I still hear the thrumming in my sleep, a low vibration that rattles my teeth. It's not a sound you hear with your ears, but one you feel in your marrow. It's the sound of the earth trying to wake up. I remember the smell of the lye in the creek trying to scrub the copper scent off my skin. It never really went away, no matter how hard I tried. It's like the earth itself marked me as its own. The men in the wool coats, they never looked at me. They only looked at the logs, checking the furnace like it was a holy altar. They were terrified, but they were too greedy to walk away. I found a cufflink in the drainage grate, slick with that black sap. It had the Rockefeller crest on it. One of them had been down here, and they didn't leave the way they came in. My skin started to peel, and I couldn't eat anything that didn't taste of sulfur. I was becoming part of the environment, a tether between the surface and the abyss. I was losing myself to the dark. The rhythm stopped on January 12th?
That silence was worse than the noise.
It was heavy, like a physical weight pressing against my eardrums, waiting for something to break.
I saw a crack in the foundation, and a sweet-smelling fog poured out. I looked through the fissure, and for a split second, I saw it. It wasn't a monster. It was a network of nerves and muscle. It had a face, a pale, flattened surface that mirrored my own features back at me.
It was a hungry, ancient intelligence that had been trapped by the very people who claimed to rule the world.
I realized then that I was never meant to leave this place alive.
The logs I kept were not records of science, but a tether.
I was just a battery, feeding it data to keep it satiated.
The men in the wool coats were not the masters of this operation.
They were just the janitors, cleaning up the mess of an ancient deal.
I finally understood the true nature of their greed.
I took my lantern and smashed it against the iron support beams. The glass shattered, and the kerosene flooded the chamber with fire. The flames licked at the walls, and for the first time, the thing roared back at me. The roar wasn't a scream, but a tectonic shift. The foundation began to buckle and collapse around me. I turned and ran through the service tunnel, the heat licking at my heels. I didn't look back until I reached the tree line. The forest was already reclaiming the path I had taken. I was finally out, but I was a broken man. I left my life in that hole. I never collected the rest of my pay, and I never saw my sister again. I spent the rest of my days moving from town to town. People call me a madman, a drifter who talks to the wind. But they don't understand the geography of this country. We live on a crust of vanity, waiting for the day when the foundation gives way.
You think the woods are yours because you walked a trail and saw the sun.
But you're just walking on the roof of a cage. I kept those logs for a reason, to warn those who listen to the silence.
The Rockefeller estate is still there, and the woods are still quiet. But the rhythm is coming back, stronger than before.
I am an old man now, and my time is short.
If you feel the ground shiver beneath you, do not look for the source. Run and pray that whatever is breathing beneath you isn't hungry. I never believed in monsters until I spent that winter. I never believed in monsters until I spent that winter beneath the floorboards. It wasn't just a job, it was a slow descent into a nightmare I couldn't escape. Looking back, I realize I was just a pawn in a game played by people who thought they owned the earth.
The Rockefeller estate was a place of secrets, hidden deep within the woods.
I was hired for a project they called the sub-level maintenance, but they didn't tell me the truth until I was already miles deep. They handed me a journal and a set of keys that felt like ice. I thought it was scientific research, maybe some eccentric pursuit of geothermal energy. I was a fool to think they cared about science.
I was just there to feed the silence.
The work began in a damp, limestone-walled chamber built into the hillside. It smelled like copper and rot, the scent that never really left me. I was instructed to collect samples of the black sap that wept from the walls. I didn't ask why, because the money meant my sister could go to a sanitarium. That was my stake, the one thing I was willing to sacrifice my soul for. But the isolation was starting to get to me. The woods above became unnaturally quiet. No birds sang, no insects chirped, and the wind seemed to die the moment it touched the property line. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath.
By mid-December, I realized the vibration wasn't geological.
It was rhythmic, like a massive chest cavity pressing against the limestone ceiling.
I felt the dust shake loose from the rafters in time with the thrumming. The Rockefeller representatives would come twice a week.
They never looked at me, only at the logs.
They were terrified of the thing in the hole, yet they were committed to its survival.
I started hearing voices through the iron ventilation pipes. It wasn't human speech, but an imitation of it.
It mimicked my sister's laugh, the creak of my father's chair. It was lurking me. They forbade me from bringing any light source other than a shielded kerosene lamp.
They knew if I heard it clearly, if I listened to the breathing for too long, I would understand it was calling to me. I started to notice the clues they tried to hide. There were deep claw marks on the floor joists.
It looked like something with too many joints had been here.
I found a cufflink in the drainage grate.
It had the Rockefeller crest on it.
It was covered in that same black weeping sap.
The escalation was gradual, but relentless.
The temperature in the chamber began to spike.
The cellar turned into a humid, suffocating lung.
My skin began to peel. I couldn't eat anything that didn't taste of sulfur. I was becoming part of the environment.
On the night of January 12th, the rhythm stopped. The absence of the thrumming was terrifying. The silence was heavy, like a physical weight.
I grabbed my lamp and walked toward the far wall.
The bedrock pulsed with a faint bioluminescent glow.
I saw a crack in the foundation that wasn't there before. It was wide enough for a man to slip through.
A thick, sweet-smelling fog poured into the room. I looked through the fissure, and I saw it.
It wasn't a monster of scales or fur.
It was a mass of shifting, translucent tissue. It was weaving itself into the foundation of the earth.
It had a face, or at least a suggestion of one.
It mirrored my own features back at me.
It was a hungry, ancient intelligence. The confrontation wasn't a battle of weapons.
It was a realization of my own expendability. I understood then that I was never meant to leave. I realized the men in the wool coats were not the masters. They were just janitors, cleaning up a mess that required a human soul to stay asleep. I was just a battery for their secret. I took my lantern and smashed it against the iron beams. Fire flooded the chamber, turning the dark into a blinding, hungry light. I didn't care about the consequences anymore.
The thing roared, a sound like the earth itself breaking.
It was a groan of stone and sorrow. I turned and ran, the heat licking at my heels.
I ran through the service tunnel as the foundation buckled.
I didn't look back until I reached the tree line.
The forest was already reclaiming the path I had taken. I left my life in that hole. I never collected the rest of my pay. I spent the rest of my days moving from town to town, listening for the earth. People call me a madman, a drifter who talks to the wind. They don't understand the geography of this country. We live on a crust of vanity, ignoring the things that pulse beneath our feet. You think the woods are yours because you walked a trail, but you are just walking on the roof of a cage.
I kept those logs to warn those who listened to the silence.
The rhythm is coming back, stronger than before. I am an old man now, and my time is short.
If you feel the ground shiver, do not look for the source.
Run and pray that whatever is breathing beneath you isn't hungry.
I never believed in monsters until I spent that winter beneath the floorboards. It is all still there, waiting.
The journal is filled with frantic notes and sketches.
The final page is blank, save for a single dark smudge.
The rhythm continues, waiting in the dark. I spent years trying to put the truth into words, but ink and paper just can't hold the weight of what I saw down there. Even here, in the middle of all this noise, I can still hear it.
It's just waiting for the right moment to wake up again.
These keys were the only thing I kept from that place.
They still feel cold, no matter how long I hold them.
The estate is still there, rotting away in the woods. But the secret it hides is far from dead. I keep writing, even though I know nobody's listening.
Someone has to keep the record, just in case.
Do you hear that? It's getting louder.
The earth is starting to shift again.
They think they're safe because they can't see what's beneath them. But the foundation is cracking, and they don't even know it. I'm an old man now, and I don't have much time left. I just hope this warning finds the right person.
The world is so much bigger and stranger than we ever imagined.
And we're just walking on the roof of a cage.
If you feel the ground shiver, don't look for the source.
Just run and pray it isn't hungry.
I'm standing right at the edge of the woods again. The trees here, they look like they're trying to pull away from the property.
I can feel it in my boots, that low thrumming coming back to life.
My journal is just about falling apart now.
I've got to make sure these last few pages are clear.
If someone finds this, they need to know what's really buried here. Did you smell that? It's like copper in the air. Everything just went quiet. Even the birds stopped singing. The ground is shaking harder now, like it's waking up.
These keys, they've been a weight around my neck for 40 years.
They're cold, like they're pulling heat right out of my hand. I can feel them humming, just like the ground beneath us.
I can't run from this anymore, can I?
It's time I went back to where it all started. Maybe if I'm there, I can finally see it through to the end. Look at it, just sinking into the dirt like it belongs there. It's watching me. I know it is. It's been waiting for me to come back home. Here it is, the door to the abyss.
My hands are shaking so bad. I can barely get the key in.
There we go. It's finally opening. The smell, it's just as bad as I remember. And down into the dark one last time. I hope I'm doing the right thing. It's all still here, just like I left it. The furnace is cold, but the air, it's glowing. That crack in the wall, it's gotten so much bigger. There it is, the thing that's been calling to me. It's not a monster. It's part of the earth itself. I guess I'm the last one left to tell the story.